Marxism 108, Commodity Fetishism. In the last video, we learned that prices can deviate from the actual values of commodities, but that if we add all actual values and prices, we will find them to be equal. Does this mean that the deviation of price from value is the source of profit? No. It is not the source, but it is a form of profit. Before we look into profit, let us first try to understand exactly what is meant by commodity fetishism. Do you have a fetishism? If so, it may be different from the meaning of fetishism in Marx's day. In Marx's day, a fetish was the attribution of divine qualities to a material object. For example, the members of a cult may believe that a statue might grant them fortune or happiness, and Christians often have fetishism in the form of worshipping the relics of Jesus. These are material objects, and there is nothing subjective which they can imbue you with, but one's psychological thought processes believe that they can. This is what is meant by a fetish. It is this process which occurs between humans and commodities in the money form of value. There is nothing material in a commodity which makes it worth a specific amount of labor time. These are objects, and their value is in your mind. What is significant about commodity fetishism is that we impose upon the object something of the human life process itself, that is the energy of labored time. Thus these physical objects, through their relationship to human beings, become imbued with an essential value, almost as if this value were a physical component of the object itself. Thus human producers do not tend to have relationships with one another as themselves, but between the product of their labor. This is why commodities are social things. But come now, we all know that these subjective social qualities are not actually in the objects and the material relationship which you have to the object. Thus we see that commodity fetishism is a particular social relationship. But if, on a day-to-day basis, we overlook dozens of social relationships which are disguised as objects, then there is no wonder we misunderstand the society in which we live. This is significant, because if money is a representation of your own qualities, abilities, and efforts, and you are exchanging that money for goods, you are falling into the belief that human effort doesn't belong to humans, but in the goods humans create. You are a human being with value and with actual qualities. Objects do not have those qualities. We dispossess these qualities from ourselves by imposing them on objects and engage in what Marx calls alienation. Thus, commodity fetishism, and by extension, human alienation, is a failure of human beings to see their productive abilities as productive abilities. These abilities are put into the commodity. Instead, human beings ought to recognize that they have productive abilities, and they also have the ability to use those productive abilities any way they like. All oppression and enslavement is rooted in commodity fetishism. Humankind has become a slave of their own labor as opposed to mastering their own labor. Instead of humankind looking at nature as nature and commodities as objects, they impose some sort of natural quality on commodities, making in turn the organization of labor, administration, and production of commodities quasi-natural forces, as if these are things which would occur in nature even without humans to imbue them with their purely social characteristics. Every advance in technology only further increases fetishism and alienation, and man becomes more and more enslaved. Progress becomes contradictory to human essence. Look at the present way in which society views commodities, compared with 50 years ago, let alone 200 years ago. Progress in productive abilities leads to greater fetishism. Thus, owing to the extensive use of machinery, and to the division of labor, the work of the proletarians has lost all individual character, and, consequently, all charm for the workman. He becomes an appendage of the machine, and it is only the most simple, most monotonous, and most easily acquired knack that is required of him. Hence, the cost of production of a workman is restricted, almost entirely, to the means of subsistence that he requires for maintenance, and for the propagation of his race. But the price of a commodity, and therefore also of labor, is equal to its cost of production. In proportion, therefore, as the repulsiveness of the work increases, the wage decreases. Nay more, in proportion as the use of machinery and division of labor increases, in the same proportion the burden of toil also increases, whether by prolongation of the working hours, by the increase of the work exacted in a given time, or by increased speed of machinery, etc. Fetishism finds a particular expression in labor power, where the labor of human beings is bought and sold on the market according to the law of value. Does this mean that all we have to do to avoid exploitation is have humans sell their labor power at its actual value? Actually, this is not exploitation. Exploitation does not consist of selling labor below its actual value, and thus, in our next video, we will discuss exploitation and the source of profit.